Leader Fan Radio Network.
BEERRUN, Beerun.
And KFAN.com. 2 minutes and 33 seconds past the hour, 3 o'clock Central Daylight Time. It is a Tuesday edition of the Afternoon Aardvark on a pretty nice, not all that steamy, mid-August afternoon here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Guardsy produces the show. My name is Dan Barreiro, former Inkstein Wretch. Newspaper of the Twin Cities. The Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line is wide open. Hip Cricket came through with flying colors again today. 64686. That's the Bradshaw and Bryan toxic text line, as it can be some days. Will it be today? Hard to say.
Only time will tell, Davey.
Only time will tell, Davey. Yesterday, actually, I think, had a little bit of toxicity to it, but a lot of good texts on a number of controversial subjects. I don't know if the same will be in order today, but we'll give you details on everything you need to know about this show in just a few minutes, including two outstanding guests, one of them by phone and one of them via in studio, I should say. The uglydeck.com guest lineup. Are we headed for drunken idiocy in Chaska, Minnesota? Are you familiar with Chaska?
Big Chaska guy. Love Chaska.
Okay. Any particular reason? What strikes you about Chaska? What is it that caught? How did you lose yourself in Chaska's eyes?
I kind of like how it's, kind of old school. It's kind of historic. It's got the downtown. It's kind of spread out. You want a little land, you can spread out in Chaska. Got good schools. Got some good private schools. They've obviously got Hazeltine.
Okay.
I like Chaska. I've spent a lot of time in Chaska recently.
I've spent some time there as well, especially when we were living in Victoria, Minnesota. I don't know. I don't want to become Puritan guy when it comes to booze. So I'm willing to listen. I have my doubts. I have my concerns, even though I think this is starting to become a bit of a trend. And maybe this is all timing related. Because the first piece of video I saw this morning was Wrigley Field, Chicago, bleachers.
Oh, yeah.
Left center, I think.
Yeah.
A drunken, idiot White Sox fan fighting with several drunken, idiot Cubs fans. And then towards the end of it, the great big guy, I don't even know, I think he was a Cubs fan, just getting lit up by the much more slender but aggressive White Sox fan. And again, I don't know that they were drinking. I have a pretty good guess.
Yeah, I have an assumption.
It's the way it tends to work. We've talked about this before. You want to eliminate 95% of anything that goes wrong in the arena, you ban booze. I know that's not realistic, but booze often, it makes people too brave, obviously. So maybe it's timing. Maybe because I just watched that video. I'm almost sorry I did, because now I feel like I'm participating in the nonsense, in the drive-by, so to speak. If you'll notice, the long view, whoever was taking the shot from the front, in the background, there were minimum 75 people, phones up, capturing the same
Got to get it.
video. Apparently, you got to get it, and you got to get it right. BringMeTheNews.com. Of-age visitors and residents. Well, let me back up again. You see that, and this should be a great event. And I'm not saying it ruined Cubs White Sox, but it's such a bad look. It really is an embarrassing look. Even if that doesn't indict everybody who goes to a game. The fact that it's among even the possibilities, it's just so embarrassing. Dateline, BringMeTheNews.com, Dateline Chaska. Of-age visitors and residents will be able to indulge in alcoholic beverages at select events in downtown Chaska. Last night, city council members gave their approval to the Chaska Downtown Business Alliance's plan, which had applied for multiple on-sale liquor permits for various events throughout the rest of the year. The move does not create a new so-called social district like other cities in the state, but will allow people to purchase alcohol at licensed downtown businesses and restaurants during select events, and wait for it, walk around with their drinks within a set boundary. You want to know the events that are approved?
I'm very curious, yeah.
You probably have attended some of these.
Yeah, I might be going now.
By the way, the event boundaries run from Pine and Walnut Streets to Highway 61 and 1st Street in the city's downtown. Here's the approved alcohol events. September 10, Farmers Market. September 17, Farmers Market. September 26, Fall Market. October 3, Fall Market. Fall Market, Fall Market. Then October 24, Trick or Treat Downtown Halloween.
Love it.
November 7, the Deer Opener Celebration.
Got to have that.
Can you bring guns to that too?
Probably. Yeah, be careful.
November 14, Holiday Market. Holiday Market, and then Small Business Saturday. And December 5, we wrap it up with Hometown Holiday. Now, this looks to me like what could possibly go wrong territory, but maybe folks will tell me, stop catastrophizing. It's not as bad as you think. Other cities have experimented with this with some success. There was a time when the mayor of Minneapolis wanted to do it for downtown Minneapolis in stretches, and I don't know where that's at. I want to say in Nicollet Mall, along there. I don't know whatever happened with that proposal. In 2023, the city of Anoka, familiar with Anoka?
Yes.
Was the first municipality in the state to introduce a social district, a state-sanctioned program where visitors can purchase beer, wine, and cocktails served in special cups from businesses within a designated area and stroll about with those drinks. Last year, Shakopee became the second Minnesota city to enact a social district around the Canterbury Park Entertainment area and near the downtown riverfront. Do we really need this?
I think so. I like it. It's kind of like
of course you do, because you like drinking beer.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
When you're in New Orleans, when you're in Vegas, there's something to be said about just casually walking from store to store having a pop. I like it. I think it's a good idea. Have you ever been to a farmer's market? You telling me you wouldn't want a Bartles and James? Those can be, I mean, sometimes you need it just to get through. I mean, how many cucumbers can we look at before
I'm off
we
the
make
sauce
a decision?
completely. Even the hard Bartles and James berry coolers. I'm done. I've had it's too
It's a
dangerous.
heck of a run.
Yeah, it's a good run. I don't know. I admit I do tend to catastrophize. I'll grant you, but I just have a bad feeling. Do we really? We can't enjoy these events without a pop walking around with something in our hand. Just can't?
You can. Some can't. Some choose not to. Some don't want to.
Man.
Beautiful day in Chaska. You're getting dragged to the farmer's market. Nice IPA or light beer walking around. That might help a little bit.
City planners, text me on this. You may have experience with this. Worth it? Dangerous? What could possibly go wrong territory? 64686. That's the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN Toxic text line. Don't forget, again, today, every day this week, I believe, we're giving away tickets to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, who are going to be performing in concert the first Saturday of the Great Minnesota Get-Together. So you can participate. In fact, you can weigh in on this issue, if you'd like, via the talkback. And if your talkback is selected, you get a pair of tickets to that first Saturday night concert. I think that's the 29th of August, and tickets to get you into the Great Minnesota Get-Together as well. We had a lot of good options yesterday. I assume we have a winner. I don't know if we've announced it or can announce it, but every day. So this might be a good subject to get in on early and have some fun with it. How many other towns have been doing this?
I honestly don't know. I mean, the ones you mentioned, I feel like Edina does it during the art fair. I don't know if they do it all the time in the 50th in France era. I haven't been in an art fair in 40 years, basically. But
yeah, it's been a while for me, too.
I feel like they sell booze on the street for that. I'm pretty sure.
For the art fair?
I think so.
Edina art fair?
I feel like I've seen some Instagram posts about it. Like,
that surprises me.
Come get a couple beers, walk through the art fair. But again, I haven't been in years.
Yeah.
Any town that has like a little quaint downtown like that,
okay,
I think probably does it for special events.
Don't blame me when there's an incident. Somebody already You're way too worried about this. If a few people get out of hand, they'll be dealt with by police. Yeah, that always goes well. And then we got video of that, and then we got another controversy, and we got another
fight at the farmer's market.
Exactly it. That turns, and then the cops are accused of excessive force, and go ahead.
Paul Bloom's there.
Just exactly filing a live report.
Yep.
Just don't come back to me. Headline, Wall Street Journal right now at WSJ.com, Guardsy. Crackdown on sidewalk drinking pits British pub goers against the fun police. A London council's proposal is threatening one of Britain's great summer joys, getting sloshed while standing up. Interesting timing.
Yeah.
Given what we were just talking about. Keep your texts coming. Meantime, Kevin Seifert joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Well, first of all, you don't like to go to the state fair. You don't like to go to any fairs or any public events at all, I don't think, do you? I mean, you've made that very clear. Any place there's a crowd, you don't want to be. So I assume you would be suspicious of this movement to open up various downtown suburbs to where at an event you could bring your booze, carry your booze with you from spot to spot.
Yes, I oppose fun in general. So whether it's at a fair,
right,
or in the suburban streets, trying to get people sloshed or anything in between, I think we should avoid that at all costs.
Good to know. All right, well, we'll take that under consideration. If you have questions for Seifert on boozing or football, 64686, Bradshaw and DeBryant. KFAN text line as always. All right. I hesitate to ask you this question because it's unfair, but that's never stopped me before. If you had to extract a single useful headline or story out of the Vikings' first preseason game, if you were forced to, what would it be?
The run game emphasis is real.
I like it.
And I'm going to write, actually I'm writing a story now, and hopefully it'll post tomorrow about the offensive line side of that and what has changed and what's different. But I mean, and we've talked about this before, you don't draw any conclusions until you see, intent and execution in regular season games when it counts. But everything we've seen so far is that they have made a genuine and real attempt not only to do different things in the running game, but to be better at it as well from a blocking standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, and from a coaching standpoint. Saw a very small glimpse of that in the preseason game in that first series. I mean, it wasn't a coincidence that they opened up with a wide zone run and Christian Darrisaw drove a guy 5 yards downfield, and Aaron Jones got an 18-yard run, and then a few plays later you saw Jordan Mason on, I think, a 15-yard run, and a lot of heavy personnel and a lot of clear attempts to focus on that, maybe in more a symbolic way. But I really have bought into the attempt, at least, because that's all you can really do in training camp is make the attempt. So there's no prizes for trying, but they have tried and they are making an attempt. And I do not believe it is window dressing. I think there are real efforts underway to make this a tangible, real thing that happens when is available to them when the regular season starts.
Do the Vikings, and by the way, as you know, that's music to my ears for sure. And,
I know. I'm surprised to hear you come back so quickly. I thought you'd be very excited.
No, I am, because I think this time you might be. They might mean it. Again, you'd like to see it. We're not going to really know until we know, and we're not going to really know until the first 8 times we run in a game, we run for 12 yards, and KOC says, "Screw it, we're back to it," or says, "No. we keep going at it, man. We're going to pound away because that's what the best teams do, not stupidly, but, with some tenacity. But we'll see where that goes. Is it fair to say that the biggest quarterback issue now facing, I would even say, the entire organization, the general manager, the new general manager included in the head coach, is the obvious sticky wicket that if they are focused on this upcoming season and they don't believe in giving away any seasons, as they demonstrated, frankly, by bringing Kyler Murray here in the first place, that their only real option for the regular season is to demote J.J. McCarthy, even if they still haven't given up on him, to third string. And if they do demote him to third string, promoting Carson Wentz, who I think clearly right now is a better option as a backup, does that effectively mark the end of his run here and make it more likely that his representation says, look, it's pretty clear, the handwriting's on the wall here, do us a favor, let's get the kid out of town, give him a chance someplace else where he can get a fresh start?
Well, I think whatever the likelihood that his people or he will come to that conclusion, it will probably happen whether he's the number 2 or the number 3 to start the season. Whatever that likelihood is, I don't know how much it would change based on that, because he's not the starter and he wants to be the starter, obviously. As far as, is this I've seen this pretty much, I've seen it everywhere in terms of public discussion and speculation and suggestion, and I don't disagree with it being a very prominent topic now that we know the starting quarterback and the result of the starting quarterback competition. We may be a little addicted to quarterback competitions and needing to find some other outlet for that addiction and now focusing on the backup job. But all I can say is, I haven't seen any evidence yet that they are considering that. J.J. McCarthy's taking all the second team reps in training camp, taking more reps than Carson Wentz. He should, because if Carson proved anything last year, it's that he could function in a game without taking a lot of any preseason reps or training camp reps, and not much in the way of practice reps either. And then that's the way it played out in the game as well. But we haven't had another shot at Kevin O'Connell since, at least locally, since he made the original announcement and said that J.J. McCarthy would be the backup quarterback, which we took to be number 2. I think it's a fair and likely question that he'll face when he talks, I think, tomorrow, when the joint practices with Baltimore come up. But all I can say is, to this point, I haven't seen any evidence that they're doing anything to dissuade anybody publicly that J.J. McCarthy is the number 2 quarterback. It's a decision that's easier to make than the starting position, obviously, and doesn't take as much time and doesn't require them to split reps or anything. And so it could be an open question throughout the year.
Yes.
Frankly. But until that point, I haven't seen any evidence of it.
Is it possible? You can make the argument on this basis that the quarterback who should see the field the most for the last 2 preseason games is McCarthy. That he needs the reps, and that maybe that makes the decision even clearer, one way or the other. If he plays much better, and you go, you know what, we're on the track. We don't have to make any of these kinds of goofy decisions. We're fine with 3 quarterbacks. We'll figure all that out later. On the other hand, I worry that you don't like to play a lot of starters, so you're back to is McCarthy even really given a fair chance if he gets the bulk of the reps the last 2 preseason games?
Well, I don't think that him getting the bulk of the reps with the second or third teams or whatever, and it going the way it might go when you're playing with second and third teamers should, if anyone can separate what's his responsibility and what isn't his responsibility in those situations. It should be the coaching staff and the scouting staff and the general manager, because they have all the plays in front of them. They know all the assignments. They know exactly who was responsible for a play working or a play not working. So, like, I don't know that it would be unfair to him, other than maybe his stats might not look that good. I do think what you're saying makes perfect sense, and I think in an ideal world they will play him as much as they possibly can. And the injury to Max Brosmer, which doesn't appear to be too serious, but he wasn't practicing yesterday, so unless he's was just taking a day off with the wrist injury and is going to jump back in tomorrow and Thursday, he may not be available. So you may only have two quarterbacks for the Saturday game, because I don't expect starters, including Kyler Murray, to play in preseason, because they'll probably do all their work in the joint practice. So long roundabout answer, but I do think that it makes perfect sense to get him as much playing time as possible. That opportunity is now there, and I don't think that a poor statistical performance would necessarily be held any more against him than anything else that's happened so far.
Lieber with us yesterday said that during the game and immediately afterwards, he had his immediate perception was that McCarthy looked awful, but that when he went back and looked at the tape, he didn't think he was great, but he didn't think it was quite as bad as the perception. What's a fair read on how McCarthy looked on Saturday?
That it was pretty similar to what we've seen through a lot of training camp. You saw some good plays. You saw some ones that it was hard to figure out exactly what was even happening. The very first one where the timing was off on the jet sweep. The quarterback's in charge of that. But the receiver also has his role to play too. So it wasn't completely clear why that happened, but you don't often see those things happening no matter who the quarterback is. You saw him overthrow a pass that we've seen way too much last year and in training camp that just seemed like he wasn't able to drop it into Deshaun Jones there near the sideline. And we saw some good throws as well. And so, I didn't think it felt like he was awful. I didn't feel like he was particularly sharp. And that's pretty much where I've felt that he's been in for most of camp, and it was why I didn't really think that he was mounting a serious challenge to Kyler Murray, because if you're having some good mixed with some bad, that's not going to elevate you from the spot you were already in.
All right, here's the test. Here's my current Inkstein Wretch test on Kyler and how hard we may be trying to get on the Kyler bandwagon. The incompletion that ended the drive that was concluded with a field goal, first drive of the game, right? Where we ran well and had a nice third down completion, and then a check down for two, and then a check down incomplete pass to Jonesy to wrap it up. Was that simply an errant throw, or are you going with this conventional wisdom that the quarterback and the receiver, in this case the running back, read it differently? Simple as that. Well, you know what? I'm not going to prejudice the case. Which is it in your mind?
I mean, I don't think it's conventional wisdom. That's what happened. There's Aaron Jones kind of sat, and Kyler Murray thought he was going to keep drifting a little bit to that side. And so it was not an inaccurate. I mean, it wasn't accurate in the sense that it wasn't catchable, but it was two different people thinking two different things. And you actually I've seen that happen lots with quarterbacks and receivers in the preseason. It doesn't happen too often when you've been working a lot together, but I wouldn't say that they have worked a lot together. So I'm like 100% convinced that that's what it was. I do not think it was just a poorly thrown pass. I think it was two people thinking different things about, and that's no less serious. I mean, because it leads to the same outcome. But if somebody's worried that Kyler might not have the most accurate arm, or is worried about his ability to put the ball in a very specific spot, that play is not the example to use.
All right, I am willing to accept your premise if you identify any single time, not two or three times, any one time since J.J. McCarthy has come here in which an incompletion similar to that one has been described in the same nuanced way as opposed to bad throw by JJ. That's my only concern.
I don't know if I can come up with one off the top of my head right now, but I don't think that takes any less truth out of what I said about that play. Now, if your larger point is we're grading Kyler on a curve and we're hammering JJ and saying it's his fault every time, then we can have that conversation with a larger sample size. But regardless of what we may or may not have said about JJ over the years, that's what happened on that play. Now, if Kyler overthrows somebody, I'll say it.
Mm-hmm.
If he, and that's happened in training camp, and I've written it and said it to you and on podcasts and whatever else. If there's a receiver open downfield and he either doesn't see him or can't get it to him, I'll mention that too. But in that particular play, that's just what happened.
Yeah, no, I'm granting it, I think, but I think if the going in perception is one thing about one guy and another on another, and sometimes some of that is earned on the basis of performance, I think it's easy I'm not saying you, but I think it's easy for people to, every time there's an inaccurate throw, he's off again, and all I'm saying is, I just hope we're careful about that we don't always hold it against McCarthy or make the assumption. I honestly don't remember very many times where he said, well, McCarthy, he saw something different on that play, and he thought the running back was going to fade a little bit more, and so that's where he kind of threw the ball. To me, it feels more like, well, McCarthy, another bad, incomplete. That's all it is, and it's another bad pass. That's my only concern, because once the narratives get going, man, it's almost like a runaway truck, especially before we've played a regular season game. And, the current thing is, Kyler, we're on board. We're ready to go with him. He's all, full speed ahead, to the point where the first drive we're talking about, I'm hearing people say, well, he looked like he had pretty good command what was going on out there. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's probably true, and he may have made a couple of running calls at the line of scrimmage, but he's starting for the 8th year in his career. And I just feel like there's too much of an effort to project on Kyler before we've actually seen it in any meaningful way.
Yeah, and I think it's fair. And what I've said is that should be a big distinction between demonstrating that you're the best quarterback in camp, and that and on the one hand, and then on the other hand, that you're primed to lead a top 10 or a top 5 offense in the course of a regular season, in a season that starts off right off the bat with 2 division teams, the Packers and the Bears. And so he's not it's not as if he can ease into the season or the Vikings can ease into the season. They're going to be up against it from the get-go. And so I don't know that a lot of people locally at least have declared that he's shown us enough that we feel confident that he can do that he can power a top 10 offense or whatever, and at the very beginning of the season and on through and get them deep into the playoffs. I just think that the only conclusion that most people have reached is that he was and proved to be the best quarterback in camp, and that he still has, despite being in his 8th year and despite almost, he just turned 29, and so almost on his way to 30, that he still has a lot of the elite level blue chip physical attributes that made him the number 1 pick in the draft in 2019. And so all those things are real and all those things exist, but it doesn't get him close to the determination or conclusion that he is going to be good enough right away, especially in this offense, to do the things that maybe some people think are automatic already at this point.
Kevin Seifert covers the Vikings for ESPN and ESPN.com. Best case scenario is obvious. Kyler takes this opportunity and just runs with it, and has the season of his career, or one of the best seasons of his career, and presumably that would mean, depending on team success, that the Vikings might be willing to invest in him right beyond this season, given he's not exactly ancient. Worst case scenario to me, I want to see if you agree with this or you think it's a little different. To me, worst case scenario is he's okay. He has some ups, he has some downs. Team maybe makes the playoffs, gets knocked off again first round, or maybe misses the playoffs by a game. And he kind of, he's serviceable. He's better than what we had last year, but not probably enough to keep. Meantime, JJ is either number 3 or is number 2, but Kyler never gets hurt, and so we never see him. And to that extent, then, that's to me the nightmare scenario for the Vikings in a sense is at the end of this season or going into next season, they're kind of in the same position trying to evaluate J.J. McCarthy without any new regular season tape from which to draw.
And I've been thinking about this, and I think maybe I've mentioned to you off air, it's the 2024 scenario, or I guess after the 2024 season, the 2025 offseason scenario all over again, where Sam Darnold had a good year, got him into the playoffs, didn't finish very strongly, and there was, genuine discussion about whether anybody thought he was worth bringing back, let alone whether they should let him go just because they had J.J. McCarthy. And so, and they had to make a judgment on J.J. without really knowing how he had come back from his year off from the injury. And so the absolute worst case scenario is you would have a bunch of people saying, don't make the same mistake twice.
Yeah.
Look what happened when you let Sam Darnold go. It's hard enough to find a guy to play the way Sam Darnold did in 2024 and the way it sounds like you're describing Kyler Murray might play in 2026. Don't, take the bird in the hand. Don't try to, shoot for the moon with somebody else. And you have the same discussion all over again with at least a different general manager, at the helm and making the final decision and executing those player moves. But it's eerily similar to what the discussion was then. And the last thing you would want them to do is, and again, this is a different decision-making group, so it's not as relevant, but to make a different decision because the first one didn't work out the way you thought it might work out. And then when you're talking about two different people in Sam Darnold and Kyler Murray. And so it's really fascinating, and it makes you wonder if they don't feel like re-signing Kyler Murray and they don't, and they're not ready to go back to J.J. McCarthy, because they don't have any more evidence than they had before, at least during the regular season games, that if they're just on the road to getting another, following the organizational history of getting another veteran plug-in, you saw Baker Mayfield just and contract negotiations with the Bucs. And so I've almost been half joking that Baker Mayfield's next year's Sam Darnold, Kyler Murray. And I don't have I'm just saying that mostly as a joke, but it has to be somebody. They're not going to be, if they have the kind of season you're talking about, they're not going to be drafting high enough to get one of the quarterbacks that would be considered ready to go right away, I don't think, in the 2027 draft. So you're really right back in that same scenario. So that's, you could say that's a worst case scenario than somehow them just collapsing and finishing 2-15 or something like that, because then they would at least be in position for a potential draft of a quarterback. And so the worst case scenario is finishing the year not thinking you have one on the roster and having limited resources to go get the next one.
If this defense is going...
Man, why are you making me be so negative here? I mean, we're getting ready to start the season, and I'm already painting a terrible picture for next offseason.
It's not so much that, as I said, and look, You're Pollyanna. I endorsed the McCarthy draft. I definitely did. I'm not going to pretend that I didn't. I'm not exactly, since, though, on the basis of what I've seen, been a J.J. McCarthy apologist by any means. I hear from the McCarthyites a lot that I'm too mean to him and I'm too vicious on him. This isn't even a position so much as, even if you think, I want to hang with him, it's the old deal of, well, you'd like to have some more evidence from which to work. Now, again, they see these guys in practice. They see them in the projection rooms, all that kind of thing. But that's the ongoing dilemma with him, is getting him on the field to see if there's these discernible signs of, okay, he's starting to pick this up better. He's starting to pick this up enough to where we think we can extend with him. But let's go to defense here as we wrap up real quick. If you had to name a single player who you believe, let's go Pollyanna. This is going to be a great defense this year, not a good defense. This is going to be a great defense this year. that would be dependent on what individual player in your mind more than any other?
I mean, they have a lot of guys who have played to a certain standard, but I'll say Dallas Turner, because you can't be a great defense without having someone, in my opinion, who is a good enough pass rusher that the other team has to account for you. I mean, Brian Flores can come up with all the schemes and all the pre-snap disguises and have some of the younger quarterbacks in the league confused, and maybe even some of the veteran quarterbacks in the league confused. But ultimately, the advantage lies when there's one guy on the, and we know Micah Parsons is probably like and Myles Garrett are the two guys that like are the prototype here. But great defense is when at least one player on that defense is requiring special attention from the offense, because it filters down to everybody else. And when it's the same as with Justin Jefferson, on the Vikings offense. Not great for Justin necessarily, but when he gets double and triple teamed, but great for everybody else to make plays. And the same thing on defense. If Dallas Turner can go from being a guy that when he's rushing one-on-one against certain tackles, he'll get a sack like he did last year. I think it was 8 times towards the end of the season. If he can be a guy who is dynamic enough that he can beat double teams, that you have to slide the protection to his direction. You have to make sure the tight end is accounting for him. You have to know the running back has to have his eye out, and the tackle has to be, rocking in his stance, because he's got a big time blue chip pass rusher coming at him. If Dallas Turner can be that, this defense will be better than it has potentially ever been under Flores, given the rest of what they have lined up.
Sorry about that. I almost forgot to turn on my mic. One last quickie on defense. The devastating Jamal Adams news, do you think it will have any impact on Harrison Smith being more likely to say last minute, I'm raising my hand, I'm back?
No, it was interesting that Jamal Adams was playing that safety role, in part because the Vikings probably wanted to see if they needed to use him there, what it would look like. I think Harrison will make a decision, or publicize a decision based purely on what is best for him and his family. And the Vikings have made clear that they'll certainly take him back at any time. But I don't think that that Harrison was sitting back and thinking that, well, we'll see if Jamal Adams takes my job or not. I think in a best case scenario, Jamal was going to be a plug-in guy for certain packages and certain types of blitzes and certain types of situations that Brian Flores wanted to do, and probably would have been pretty effective in that. Had he not gotten hurt. But it was always hard for me to believe that he would be a 3-down deep safety in the way that Harrison Smith was.
Seifert, we appreciate it as always. We'll try to be more Pollyanna next week.
All right, Dan.
Thank you. That's Kevin Seifert, ESPN.com. We got a shorty coming up. Then we have an in-studio guest to discuss. We'll give you some details on that when we come back as well. We'll get to some text reaction via the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN Toxic text line as well. Very busy program, off to a very controversial start.
You're listening to Barreiro.
Teachers make a difference each and every day. Now's your chance to say thanks. You can nominate an outstanding public school teacher through iHeartRadio's Thank a Teacher, powered by Donors Choose. They could receive $5,000 for classroom supplies and resources. Nominate now at iHeartRadio.com/teachers.
Jim in St. Paul reacting to our discussion with Kevin Seifert. I don't like Kyler, but he has the 6th highest completion percentage in NFL history. A stat that means absolutely nothing, by the way, in any meaningful way, but I'll continue reading. Comparing him on the same scale as JJ is ludicrous. You got to listen a little more closely than that. I wasn't attempting to compare either of them to each other or anybody else. The point I was making, and I stick by, is that we go down a certain rabbit hole, good and bad, frankly, about a given player, and then we end up trying to fit every play and circumstance into what side of the coin we're on regarding that player. I have hardly been a J.J. McCarthy apologist. For example, 952 guy, did you know this? We apparently forgot last year to look at the stats that had McCarthy in the bottom of all categories.
We missed that.
We missed that completely.
Yeah.
Thank God he's here to help us understand it. I'm not a McCarthy apologist. And to the larger issue of why I'm spending as much time on McCarthy, it's because it's the elephant in the room. What pick was he? What did we move on? Was it 8,
JJ?
8, 9, 10? Whatever the pick was.
I feel like he was 10, 9 or 10.
They made him a priority. So regardless of whatever other story is going on around here, that's a huge story. McCarthy represents a huge story in terms of where it's been and where it's going. When you invest to the degree they invested.
10th overall pick.
Yeah, it's still a big story. That's the reason. It doesn't conveniently go away because the Vikings might kind of want it to at this point. It's the elephant in the room. It has to be dealt with one way or another. So when we examine it and discuss it, that's the reason. I'll stick with my position from the last 2 days that in a perfect world, the way the Vikings are approaching this season, the backup quarterback's Carson Wentz. And that doesn't even mean that you have to think the McCarthy's irredeemable, but you're back to what's going to give us the best chance to steal a game if the starter gets nicked, right? Well, I think that's fairly obvious in the basis of what we are seeing. So this isn't to attempt to sort of gloss over his difficulties, but when a team, like I said, makes that kind of a big move, figuring out where that's going to go. Is he going to stay? Is he going to have a second chance here? Are they going to have to trade him somewhere else? It absolutely is an important subject, regardless of what Kyler Murray does. Now, obviously, the easiest thing is if Kyler's great, it becomes easier to move past JJ, right?
Correct.
And to say, let's go ahead and trade him. Let's give him a chance someplace else, or we're going to be stubborn, we're going to keep him as the backup, whatever the case may be. But regardless of that, it has to be resolved. People forget, I guess, the degree to which this team was invested a year ago and the things that were said by coaches, by players, by pretty much everybody, don't you think? I mean, it was pretty...
life comes at you fast.
Yeah, it does. That's
Things
the
have
deal.
changed dramatically.
100%. Let's see, where were we? Hold on. Let me get to a couple quick texts here before we wrap up the first hour. Dan, the Wills seem very concerned about making the playoffs regularly, but not as concerned about stabilizing quarterback position with a long-term franchise quarterback. I think at some point they will realize the vast majority of teams that make it past the wildcard round have a long-term franchise quarterback. Well, that gets back to JJ, because that's what JJ represented, right? KOC has said, check the history books. There was pressure to a certain extent, human nature being what it is, to reach for some quarterbacks once I got here, in the name of finding that guy. And he said, I didn't like him enough. I didn't encourage that. That seemed to be his way of saying, I am in on J.J. McCarthy. And so that's exactly why teams work so hard to try to identify those guys, right? Because it is harder this way. Now, you can say, if the Wilfs send a different message to the coach and says, KOC, before this season, we're extending you another 5 years. 5. If you want to throw McCarthy out there and have him learn the hard way on the job, we'll accept. We won't love, but we'll accept 7 and 10 as just part of the process. We're willing to take a step back to find out about this guy, give him the time he needs to be who he is, and then build from there. There aren't very many NFL teams that are willing to do that. And there's probably too much other good infrastructure on the Vikings, right, to make it easy to go down to say that's the route we're going to go. That's a hard thing to convince anybody in an organization to do, right? The other X factor we didn't get to with Seifert, to me, that makes this intriguing is Teasley. Because maybe Teasley's got a philosophy where if McCarthy doesn't even end up being the backup, where in the Teasley world, we're cutting the cord. We're not going to belabor this. It's obviously it's going to end up being disruptive in certain ways. So we're going to get the best deal we can, and we're going to move on him. Because philosophically, we think clearing the air is the best thing that we can do. I don't know that that's how he feels, but isn't that what's interesting? Because he's the new guy. So what impact might he have on decisions that otherwise the Vikings might have made a different way or gone a different route? I don't know. On the other hand, he may think the exact opposite and say, no. We can slow play this. We don't care if we hear from his agent. Well, he's still with us, and we're going to play this thing out. That's the other way, indeed, to go.
Nolan Teasley, by the way, will be mic'd up for part of the game.
Is that right?
Saturday, yes, against the Baltimore Ravens.
Will he call plays the way KOC anticipate plays?
Probably not. I'm guessing he won't say it's bad football, Paul, either, like Justin Jefferson did.
That was pretty blunt. You're right about that. Tomorrow and Thursday are the joint practices.
Yes.
And we're not going to be there for either day because they're wrapped up at 2.
They'll be done.
Both days, so there's really no point, unfortunately, in us being there. Let's switch pretty dramatically with an in-studio guest coming up in just a couple of minutes. There's a new documentary that is being shown in various locations in spots around the state. I think ultimately there might be a wider distribution as well. It's called Echoes in the Night, The Search for Jacob Wetterling. And the man sort of behind this project, the director, Chris Newberry, is going to be kind enough to join us after a brief pause at the top of the hour. If you have questions for him, questions about this story, which we'll try to reestablish for the kids who might have heard of it but might not have lived through it like many of us have, 64686. Bradshaw and Bryant, KFAN text line, back in just a minute.
Bumper to Bumper with Dan Barreiro on the